Okay, we're about to get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. The time is now 6:05. This meeting is being called to order. Good evening and welcome to the December 18th, 2025 special Prince George's County Board of Education business meeting. I am Brandon Jackson, Chairman. This meeting is being interpreted live in Spanish. To listen to the Spanish interpretation, please call 508-924-5155. Once again, the number is 508-924-5155. Please focus your attention on the screen for the Spanish version of this announcement.
Hay una línea telefónica simultánea disponible para las personas que desean escuchar la reunión de la Junta en español. Si desea escuchar la reunión en español, llame al 508-924-5155.
Thank you. For anyone unable to join us live, this meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the PGCPS YouTube channel. Lastly, for recording purposes, the chairman reminds all board members to ensure that their microphones are turned on when speaking. Ms. Johnson, please call the roll.
Ms. Ajikaye, Dr. Anderful, Ms. Boozer-Strother,
Present.
Mr. Briggs, Mrs. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Goins-McCants, Dr. Moss,
Present.
Mrs. Olivo,
Present.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
We have 6 present.
Thank you. A quorum is present. Now for the adoption of the agenda. If there is no objection to December 18th, 2025 meeting agenda, will be adopted. There being no objection, the December 18th, 2025 meeting agenda is adopted. So next, moving on to policy and governance. The chairman recognizes board member Moss, chair of the Policy and Governance Committee, to present the committee's report.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. The following board policies are ready for public comment and will be available on pgcps.org. Policy 5117, Pre-K to 3 Literacy Promotion and Retention. Policy 8100, Board of Education Standing Committees and Focus Work. In accordance with Board Policy 8101, Policy Development, the following policies are for board consideration and enactment. Policies recommended for enactment tonight are Policy 0104, Title 9, Policy 5159, Telehealth, Policy 8104, Participation in Meetings Electronically, and Policy 8265, Evaluating the Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for your continued support and consideration of these recommendations. On behalf of the committee, I move that this report be adopted.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. If there is no objection, the board shall accept the committee's report and recommendation. Okay, the recommendation carries. Moving on to the consent agenda, the chair recognizes Dr. Joseph for the consent agenda item 5.1 for board approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair Jackson. I'm recommending that the board approve agenda item 5.1, the approval of the executed letter of intent for 1601 McCormick Drive, Largo, Maryland. Just a little background. This letter of intent is the first step in our commitment to investing in our staff and moving deliberately to move our staff into more appropriate workspaces. The letter of intent sets forth the terms of obligations between Prince George's County Public Schools and the Parks and Planning for the use of occupancy of 1601 McCormick Drive. Key details includes it is 57,100 square feet. The terms of the lease are 5 years, 3 years base terms, 2 one-year renewals, which can be extended through an amended negotiation by both parties. The base rate of $1,598,800 with 3% adjustments for each renewal to commence on April 1st of 2026. Upon execution of the letter of intent, Prince George's County Public Schools will begin building the fit-out activities, developing staff models, and move schedules in earnest. We'll have an update on activities at the January 2026 board meeting if approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I want to pause for any questions from the board. Dr. Moss?
Thank you, Superintendent Joseph. I don't have any questions, but I do want to compliment two great men who've gotten us to this point, and that's going to be Dr. Sharasha Coleman and Jason Washington for their leadership in getting us to this point. I know you all have been working a good bit to get us here, so I appreciate your leadership. Nothing against you, Dr. Coleman, but Mr. Washington's a really great man. So I just want to make sure I celebrate his hard work and leadership on this.
I don't know about all this alpha loving in here, man, but we gonna move forward. Board Member Walker.
Bye. Okay. Let's go to, Dr. Joseph, I just wanted to correct you. The January board meeting is on the 22nd, not the 26th. Do we have another one? Do we have? No, the 26th is a Monday. Thanks.
Great. If there is no objection, the consent agenda, item 5.1 will be adopted. There being no objection, the consent agenda, item 5.1 is adopted. Now moving towards presentations, the chair recognizes Dr. Joseph for his opening remarks, which will be followed by the Department of Budget and Management Services team to present a comprehensive overview of the PGCPS funding landscape, the blueprint impact, and the financial roads ahead.
Thank you, Board Chair Jackson, once again, and good evening for Prince George's County Public Schools. It is a sincere pleasure to see so many dedicated parents, engaged students, and community members joining us tonight for our Dollars and Decisions learning session. Thank you to all of those who are streaming tonight's event live from home. Your presence here is a powerful commitment to the future of our school system. Tonight is all about partnership, and Prince George's County's Board of Education and I believe that charting the road ahead, especially when it comes to our 27 operating budget, must be a collective effort. During the course of this event, you can expect to first learn the facts. We'll begin with a formal presentation where we lay out our financial landscape, the details on our funding, the impact of the blueprint for Maryland's future, and the specific financial challenges ahead. Next, we'll participate and engage. Shortly after our main presentations, our students will transition to a specialized student-only breakout session with our student member of the board and myself, while our parents will remain here for targeted discussion. Third, we'll ask questions. We'll conclude the evening with a live Q&A session to address your questions and concerns. Thank you for your presence, thank you for your commitment to participation, and most importantly, thank you for lending your voice as we work together to make the best possible decisions for each and every precious child entrusted in our care, a privilege that I do not take lightly. I'm excited about the conversations that will take place this evening, and I thank you again for the investment of your time and your trust in Prince George's County Public Schools. At this time, we'll begin our presentation. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so we started after the initial 100 days. We identified 5 areas of focus that we said we would need to prioritize not only for this year, but as we move into our strategic planning. First, an emphasis on special education and multilingual learners. You know, we must spend more dollars and pay more attention to the needs of our special education and multilingual learners, and we've discussed that in previous board meetings, and it's a commitment that we'll carry through for the remainder of this year and moving into our strategic planning year. 2, an emphasis specifically on literacy and mathematics. As we know, in the state of Maryland, we have new guidelines and requirements for mathematics that we're working to execute. I believe we just submitted some plans for our mathematics focus, and literacy must continue to be a focus for us. Chronic absenteeism is another huge challenge for the district as we work to continue to reduce absenteeism within the district. We've begun and will continue to work on expanding internship and dual enrollment opportunities in the district. As we have amazing universities and strong partnerships, we want to ensure access and opportunity for all of our high school students to engage in both internships and dual enrollment. And finally, recognizing that we must address organizational culture. So these are 5 critical areas that will, again, carry over into next semester and moving into future years. And as we move to the next slide, as we're thinking about our strategic plan, as we've been gaining input from the community, we recognize that there are 5 areas of focus in particular that we believe can accelerate the work that we must do within the district. First, we know that there is an opportunity for us to lead the region and lead the nation in ensuring students are AI literate. And so as we talk about AI literacy, it'll be a backbone of the upcoming strategic plan, and we believe that there are key investments in professional development for staff and students that will be necessary for us to truly advantage our students. Secondly, safety and security is an issue. It's in a large, complex district. We always want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date technology and the appropriate personnel to ensure, to the best of our ability, that our students and staff feel safe. Third, professional development. This is going to be probably one of the biggest components of our proposed plans. We have lots of work to do to ensure, that our staff have job-embedded, high-quality professional learning, and we have to think through how we best leverage technology to support. Because again, we've got 22,000 employees, and all need professional development, and we've got limited funds to do that. So thinking through what would be a solid first step to make sure that our professional development is targeted and focused will be a priority in this upcoming budget. For special education, we recognize that our cost of special education far exceed the revenue that we currently have, but each year we must make commitments to put dollars to ensure we're moving the needle and getting a bit closer to the appropriate funding levels. Though we know that it'll take years, I believe we need to make commitments each year as we move forward. And finally, employee compensation. This board has committed to our employees' compensation that keeps us competitive, and we'll need to continue to do so and ensure that we can fund the agreements that have been made. So these are the areas that, as we're thinking now about our budget and while we're thinking about cuts, no district has ever cut itself into excellence. We have to reprioritize dollars and identify new dollars to accelerate the work. And so I'll turn it over to Chief Howell at this time and her team to talk us through where we currently are, and then we can have a discussion about where we need to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Good evening, members of the board and community. I want to spend a little bit of time just giving some background about where we ended for 2025 as it sets the stage for the current fiscal year that we're in, and then as we're preparing to build our budget for fiscal year 2027. We closed out the year 2025, our operating budget was around $2.9 billion. The majority of that budget was realized for 2025 in terms of the revenue that came into the district and the related expenses that we incurred. The remaining difference that was not spent primarily relates to our restricted programs or our grants that we receive that are multi-year that roll over into the following year. As you look at our fund balance of where we started at the beginning of the year, it was around $374 million. Our fund balance essentially represents our savings account. So when we have a difference between our excess cash at the end of the year that's not spent, it goes into our fund balance, our savings account. We started the year at around $374 million, and we spent down around 42% of that, ending the year at about $217 million. As we continue to plan for as we continue to go through 26 and 27, we're very mindful of where we stand for the end of last year to ensure that we are in a position to continue to rebuild our fund balance. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about some of our spending pressures that we're facing for 2026. As we plan for our budget that was approved for 26 this past year, our budget always considers a level of a vacancy or attrition for the positions that we fill. As you can expect, when we have a $3 billion budget, the majority of our costs are tied to positions and people. So based off of historical trends, we will go through and determine the level of attrition or vacancy that may occur during the year, and we build that into the budget. We've been really successful this current year with our recruiting efforts relative to the most recent years with a high level of our positions being filled, and we've had very little attrition, resulting in a greater retention rate than what we've experienced. So as we finalize our budget for 26, the level of attrition that we plan for is higher than what we're experiencing, and that's a good thing. We're really excited that we have our positions being filled, but it does create a level of assumption now that's not going to occur in the terms of the salary costs. So that's a pressure for this year. As we continue to focus on getting our young students to school on time, we have invested in ensuring that we continue to support our transportation efforts. And then as we continue to operate in this space of uncertainty around the impact of the federal decisions that impacts the local government, state government, as well as the school district, we want to make sure that we are in a good space to deal with some of that uncertainty. We just came out of a government shutdown not that long ago, historical government shutdown, and it does have an impact to the district and to the way in which we operate. When it comes to Medicaid, we provide services to our students and we receive reimbursement for those students. But when you have a pause in government spending, it impacts what comes back into the district. It impacts the food nutrition services. We receive reimbursement for our families our students who receive free and reduced price meals. And then there was some uncertainty as we finished out last year relating to some of our ESSER funds, some of our COVID relief grants that were planned for reimbursement in 2025, where those reimbursement costs have not fully come in from the federal government. So all those have a spending impact on our current operating budget for 26 that we plan. And then as I stated before, we had a planned spend down of our fund balance, but given the uncertainty, we have to continue to preserve the remaining amount that we have available. So what have we been doing to help mitigate the impact of some of these spending pressures? Number one, we have been closely looking and monitoring our use of substitutes. With a high level of positions that have been filled, we don't have as much of a need for our substitute costs. Of course, that continues to be a normal part of operating business where you're going to need to have some augmentation from temporary and substitute staff. So we're continuing to manage that and offset some of what we plan for 26 with our substitutes. Same thing with overtime as well. As we continue to have more of our positions filled, particularly on the transportation side, the use and need for overtime comes down, so that helps to offset that a little bit as well. Throughout this process, throughout this first half of the school year, we've continuing to engage with our families to the extent there's been any change in income status to make sure that they're continuing to submit their forms for income update, which can result in free and reduced price meals and Medicaid eligibility, which could impact services that are afforded to them by the school district. We've also implemented a hiring freeze. I guess it's been about 6 weeks now, really focusing on our critical positions that we need to continue to have filled, particularly those at the school level, but closely monitoring those others that we can put on pause as we continue to go out through the remainder of this year. We also pulled back some of our non-essential spending as well, primarily related to non-local travel, catering, registration costs, conferences, to make sure that we're monitoring and curbing our spend to help offset some of the pressures that we're facing. And then finally, we've been closely looking at some of our contracted services and making sure that we're negotiating the best terms, price, and conditions for some of our ongoing contracts and new contracts that we're entering into. So as we're planning and preparing for 2027, it's important to understand how the district is funded. It's based off of sort of a simple math formula. It takes the enrollment for our students, actual enrollment, times a per pupil amount that we received. That's outlined in state legislation that defines the funding that we receive as a district from the state level and from the county level. So those per pupil amounts, it's a dollar amount times the enrollment, results in the revenue that we receive. Overall, across the state, enrollment is going down. For the district, our total enrollment is relatively flat for this past fall, September 30, 2025, versus the previous year. Now, the way in which the district receives our revenue, it's based off of, we call it funding in arrears. And what that means is the enrollment is based for the previous year, helps to drive and determine our revenue for the year that we're planning for. And so the enrollment that relates to this past beginning of the school year, September 30, 2025, sets the stage for next school year. So our total enrollment is relatively flat. As you look at the orange line, that represents our farm's student count, students that are on free and reduced price meals. That number relative to the prior year is also relatively flat. But where you will begin to see a slight dip in change is in our multilingual learners. That enrollment count is going down a little bit year over year. SPED is going up a slight incline. But for the most part, our enrollment is staying pretty steady. But where we do have a dip does impact our revenues. So this is the other part of the math equation. This is the per pupil amount that we receive for our funding. What you see outlined here represents the increase or the change in the enrollment, in the per pupil amount compared to the previous year. So for fiscal year 2027, which is the year that we're planning for, you'll see that line highlighted in yellow represents the change in our per pupil amount. We have 5 primary funding buckets that we receive. Foundation is the funding that we receive for every single student. Compensatory education is the funding that's tied to the students who are free and reduced price meals, our farm students. We receive funding for multilingual learners. We receive funding for special education, and then we receive funding for pre-K. So as you look at those different revenue buckets or those different per pupil amounts, you'll see that compensatory education is the one per pupil amount that is actually going down relative to the previous year. The others are going up slightly as well, with special education and pre-K, the ones that are increasing the most. So I know this is a little small. It's a lot of numbers on this slide, but this is a comparison of our early projected unrestricted revenue for next school year. The first column is a comparison of our budgeted revenue for 2026. The next column is our planned revenue for next year, 2027, and then you see the dollar change and the percentage change. So overall, our revenue for our major funding programs is going up a little more than 4%. As you look at the individual categories, as we were just describing on the per pupil amounts on the previous slide, foundation, compensatory education, etc., overall, you can see some are going up. Foundation is the largest funding stream that we have. But as I mentioned before, compensatory education, which is tied to our farm's student count, as you recall, that student count was going down relative to last year, and the per pupil amount is also going down. So as a result, the revenue for compensatory education is going down for next year. English learners as well is going down because that enrollment count is going down. But overall, you see that increase of about 4%. That increase for our major state aid funding programs is being offset by some of our other funding streams. So as you look at the next section down below, you see other board and federal sources. That budgeted amount for now is projected to remain the same compared to the previous year. And board sources primarily relates to revenue that comes into the school board. So that includes interest income that we earn on investments. When we rent out our buildings, we have a little bit of revenue that we receive that helps to offset the costs of operating those buildings. But the larger item that you see there is use of fund balance. That's our savings account that I mentioned before. So last year, we planned to spend, or 2026, the current year that we're in, we plan to spend $95 million, or use of fund balance of $95 million. For next year, when you consider our spend down that we had our savings account, we're having a limited use of fund balance for the coming year. So that's a decline of $70 million. The net of the two results in our total unrestricted revenue for next year, which is going up a little over 1%. And when we refer to unrestricted revenue, that essentially means the revenue that we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how it's spent. We also have restricted revenue that's tied to grants that are very specific to a purpose and has to be used for that intended purpose. As we're looking to build our budget for next year, and we look at our projected revenues, we look at some of our big cost drivers that were expected for next year. And so the difference between your planned revenue and your planned expenses will indicate whether or not you have enough revenue to cover those expenses, which it would indicate you have a surplus, or if your expenses are greater than your revenue, well, now you have a deficit. So we are projecting to have a budget gap for next year. If we do nothing else, we have to ensure that we're covering the cost of our negotiated agreements. As Dr. Joseph referred to earlier, we are committed to ensuring that we are offering competitive salary for our employees and staff. We also have what's referred to as other post-employment benefits. That is a cost that we provide to our former PGCPS employees who are now retirees. There's a cost associated with that. Fringe benefits is tied to compensation. It includes payroll taxes, health insurance, dental insurance, things of those nature. And then we have what's referred to as salary lapse. And as you heard me state earlier, when we build a budget, we make an assumption that we're going to have a position that's filled, but we know that there's going to be attrition or there's going to be vacancy during the year. So there's going to be some lapse in that salary that's tied to that position that won't occur. We know that because we've been successful in our hiring, our planned or expected lapse that's built into our base budget will need to be reduced. So the sum of those major items is around $150 million. So we know we have a gap for 2027 for which we need to solve. As you look at our overall budget for the district, you'll often hear our budget referred to between what's at the schools and central office. We really like to think about it a little bit differently because what we provide for our students and for our schools are not all located and managed by the principals. So as you look at this pyramid, that lower base reflects the portion of our budget that is developed and managed by the principals at the individual schools. Excuse me, that's 67%. As you look at the next block, it says direct student support. That's an additional 20%. That is still in direct support of students, but it is managed centrally on behalf of the schools. That includes your academic support. You think about buses, transportation costs, the maintenance of our buildings, keeping them clean, properly maintained, student services, our nurses, school psychologists, therapists, etc., safety and security, and other student support. So the sum of the middle and the bottom is 87%. So our overall budget for the district is around 87% that directly provides services and support for our students. And then the top part we refer to as our centralized services, which is basically our administrative costs needed to operate the organization. That includes like your IT function, your finance function, human resources, etc. So as we're looking to close a gap of $150 million, that is a gap that will impact all of our entire budget at the school level as well as our centralized services. I will now transition the second part of the presentation over to the budget director, our budget director, Ms. Siobhan Smith, who will walk us through our budget reduction strategy to close a $150 million gap.
Thanks, Chief Howe. So over the past couple of weeks, we have been strategically working to identify where and how we can safely and transparently find savings. To address the gap that Chief Howe mentioned for fiscal year 27, we started with our division chiefs, gave them a target of about $100 million, and asked if they could please find savings across their areas. This would include central office and our schools, and they did. Targets were based off of our discretionary funding as well as overtime, and they were given a proportionate share of that target, and they were to hit that target. And for the most part, that's exactly what happened. We also knew that there was still another gap of $50 million that we were going to have to cover through systemic means. We were going to find district-wide areas that we think we can reduce spending that wasn't going to necessarily be tied to a specific division or a specific school. So it would be more across the entire district. And then also, we wanted to make sure that there are certain things that we just have to hold harmless. Special education is one of them, so we did not cut special education. We also did not cut charter schools, and that is for a very different reason. The purpose is that charter schools, there is a funding formula that we have to adhere to that's mandated, and at that point, the charter operators then have the autonomy to spend their dollars as they see fit for their building and their students. So with that being said, if we move over to the next slide. So there's some progress. The last time I was up here, I think we were at 51%. Now we're at 68%. We've identified $102 million worth of savings for fiscal year 27. And then forthcoming, we are still working feverishly to find the additional $48 million. Next slide. And then I don't know if this is familiar or not, but we talked about bucketing our reductions. And so we found 7 broad categories that the $102 million sit in. We have general operating support, technology and communications, facilities and maintenance, instructional and student supports, business process optimization, specialized school programming, and contracted services. When you put all that together, we get to the $102 million, and the additional $48 million will also fit in these broad brush categories. And if we go to the next slide, this is just some key dates for everybody to keep in mind. So as we transition into a new calendar year, we do have a lot of budget key dates. The proposed budget will be presented on January 22nd. The budget book should be published and posted on the Budget and Management Services website on January 29th. And then as we transition into the month of February, we are going to start our work sessions and our public hearings. And that is a great opportunity to hear back from our communities as they ingest, what we've cut, maybe offer some suggestions if they have feedback. That's a great opportunity, as well as working sessions, so we can revise the proposed budget as necessary in order for our board to adopt a budget in February so that we can then transmit it over to the county. And if we transition to the next slide, so what's next? So in addition to those dates, we also have a budget advisory committee. We have a couple of meetings. We transitioned to virtual, so it's no longer in person, at least for now, for January 8th, the 21st, February 4th, and February 18th. And then our superintendent is going to present State of Schools on January 20th. And then we already talked about the 22nd and the work sessions and public hearings. So with that said, we're going to wrap up. We are still committed to our students in the community. Our goal is, again, we're trying to promote transparency. We're trying to be proactive. We're acting early. We're walking you guys through, so if it sounds redundant, that's intentional. We want to make sure that every step of the way, you are involved. And at the same time, we are trying to prioritize what matters most, our students' success and staff stability. And if we do this together, it's not going to be easy. It is painful, but we're in it together and we'll get through it. And so with that being said, we can open up for any questions.
So, board members, are there any questions? And I just want to keep in mind, because I know we are a very spirited bunch here, that we have quite a few presentations tonight. So this is a special meeting. So we don't want to be here all night. All righty. So first up, I think I have Board Member Walker. Or is that Brown? Okay. All right, Board Member Brown.
Thank you, Chair Jackson, and thank you so much for the presentation. I just have a question when it comes to operational impacts in school planning. We know that there's expected changes. Is that going to affect class sizes, elective offerings, extracurricular activities, and what specific thresholds will trigger those changes? And I say this because last year our principals definitely needed a little bit more support and how they managed their budget operationally, especially for the new principals that were in place. And so I really want to know if our school leadership is going to have, when they do make tough decisions, will they be supported? Thank you.
Yeah, I can address that question. I know our chief of schools is not here today, but we have been working very closely with school leadership. We actually had a meeting at the beginning of December to meet with the principal group to give them some insight, additional insight into what we're expected to face for the coming year. We have several cluster meetings coming up in early January to continue to work through that process. We do want to ensure that they are engaged and that they have the opportunity to really begin planning and preparing for the impact to their individual school budgets. They've been working through an exercise of really looking at their school performance plan, outlining the priorities for the school, and then thinking about how to align their budget when it's released to that SPP plan. So we have started that planning process early and engaging with our school leadership throughout that process, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Board Member Walker.
Thank you so much. I've gotten a number of questions from District 9, and thank you in advance, because I won't ask all of them tonight, and I know you all are going to get back to me on some of them. But this is around the class sizes as well. Just two-part question. There's a concern, and I'm hoping you can talk to me on if it's a myth or if you can talk to me a little bit about it so we could get better educated, that there's a concern that enrollment declines are concentrated in poverty, special education and mental health needs versus wealthier communities, which might not have declining enrollment. And so the question becomes, is there a gap between high-need districts if you see that happening with the enrollment across the district? That's the first question. And then the second piece to that is along the same sides, is that there's also an assumption or an understanding that because enrollment has declined, that class sizes have also declined. And we haven't quite seen that happen. But as we look into the future, the question is, what is PGCPS doing to anticipate if funding continues to decrease, that we're thinking ahead and looking at class sizes and what that might mean in the future? I'm so sorry that those were two. I can try to condense the two. Is that helpful?
Yeah, so I'll address both sort of together. So as we're building and planning for our budget for next year, and knowing that there is an impact in enrollment, when you think about the funding for the district, we receive funding for every single student, and as you saw in that first slide about enrollment, the total enrollment is flat. For some of our specialty groups, the way that the blueprint funding works, we get additional funding on top of that. So for some of our student groups, the enrollment is going down, primarily for pre-K and for ML. So there will be, and then we also saw that compensatory education is relatively flat, but the per pupil amount is going down. So that does have an impact on enrollment that's coming into the district. So you have to kind of funnel all that into, this is kind of your starting point with your revenue. Obviously, we have to take care of our, centralized services, but the blueprint does require that the funding follows the students to the school. When we build our budgets for next year, our school budgets, it's based on projected enrollment. And so we are seeing projected enrollment, particularly in certain grades, are going down, but it varies by school. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some schools you may see different variations than in others. But the projected enrollment does drive how the resources are allocated. And then from there, the principals do have the flexibility to determine what they do with the resources that comes into their building to support that budget that's being developed. And then I guess on a long-term basis, in terms of what we're expected to see with possible continued enrollment declines, we know that it's important that as we're resetting our budget for 27, we're thinking about longevity and what this is going to look like on a going forward basis as well, in anticipation of the fact that, you know, at best enrollment will remain flat, but there is a potential that it's going to continue to decline for certain student groups.
And Board Member Walker, if I may add, I think one challenge that we definitely face in Prince George's County is we have a number of specialty programs, and a lot of the specialty programs were supported with additional staffing above and beyond that will be affected in this budget. You know, so we can no longer maintain lowly enrolled specialty programs because it's just fun, you know, unless the board chooses, of course. But it would be, you know, it's going to be a challenge because, you know, in this lean season, we're going to have to make sure that the dollars are prioritized and we are maximizing, because if you have a small program, you're putting a teacher in a place and then there has to be accountable somewhere else, and so that's why you see high class sizes in some instances, you know, because you might have a low specialty program. If you have a specialty program with 10 kids in it, you know, and you've got a full teacher there being supported, then it's going to impact somewhere in that building because that school only gets a certain amount of funding in terms of the formulas. So I think in this particular moment, we are going to see some of those decisions that we have to collectively make.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Chief Howe. The next segment we'll move into, Senate. Is there any more questions from the board? I don't. Okay. Board Member Oli.
Thank you. Chief Howe or Director Smith, could you just remind us our revenue sources and those amounts or percentages from the state and the county, please?
Yeah, we didn't have it in this slide here. We often look at a view of it by blueprint program, but the majority of our funding comes from the state, and then we receive an additional amount from the county. The sum of the two helps to fund the blueprint programs that we saw earlier on the slide. I don't have the exact percentages in front of me. I'm having a bit of a senior moment right now. I can pull it up in just a second and get back to you on that exact split. But the majority of our budget does come from the state with a portion from the county. And then we do have our own, what we call referred to as board sources, which I described earlier. We have a very teeny amount that's unrestricted that comes from federal sources, less than 100,000, but we do have federal grants as well.
Thank you.
Board Member Walker.
Yes, and this isn't necessarily for you to answer tonight, just in consideration. When I think about the District 9 schools, I do recall that, for instance, specialty programs like Frederick Douglass High School, their IB program and the P-TECH program, for instance, was filtered to that school in part to eliminate it being closing, right? Potential of it closing because of low enrollment. So it filters scholars there. So my consideration is, we know we don't have money for new schools or the time in order to build them. We know we have low enrollment, and in the rural areas, because they're so spaced out, if we can really just think a little bit about how do we have enough space and scholars to be able to go to the schools that we have with the boom of housing developments that we have. Again, don't answer it now, but as we take a look at specialty programs, I'm hoping that we can kind of balance out where our specialty programs are going so that we can make sure that our scholars can filter into schools that's already there and us not having to then be poor going, because we can't, build fast enough or with enough money. Thanks.
And just to circle back to the question that was asked earlier, around 59% of our revenue comes from state sources, another 32% or so comes from county, and then we have about 4.5% at the federal level, and then around 1% or so is at the board level. And then, of course, the use of fund balance is dwindling, but that's typically less than 2% as well.
Board Member Moss?
Thank you all for pulling this together. I want to make sure there's an element of this conversation that I want to elevate for the parents who are in the room. There are two elements of it. One is that when you think about our blueprint revenue, which is our main source of funding, we expected that to be able to grow at a faster rate than in which it's growing at. It's growing at about a 4.3% rate. And even when Blueprint was initially funded, we need much more of that to give kids the kind of education they deserve. And so even if Blueprint was funded at its maximum level, it still wouldn't meet the expectation of giving kids the kind of education they deserve. So I just want to foundationally say that. I want to layer that with the fact that we haven't talked about the $60 million that we stand to lose because of MSDE's classification of some of those funds that would have been directed to some of our highest need scholars. And so if the budget office or the superintendent or Chief Howell could kindly share with the general public that if something doesn't shift there, we're losing $60 million if either the legislature or the MSDE doesn't give some hard attention to this $60 million that we can lose. That's a lot of things that we can do. So could you all color that for the public tonight on what that means? We just haven't shared it tonight.
Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit. It was a few board sessions ago where we highlighted the fact that in our revenue that we have projected for this coming year that we just reviewed, there is some risk associated with that. There is a change, not a change, it's outlined in legislation, it was always there, that there is a portion of our revenue tied to our farm's student count where we are able to have that student count directly certified for certain family members. Beginning in this coming school year, those family members are required to have a form that's submitted for the students to be counted. So we are looking to, we're hoping for there to be a change in the impact of what that will do for the coming school year. It's not just for us, it's for all of our LEAs in the district, but there is revenue risk tied to that. We know that MSDE is required by law to gather our student count in both ways, and that information has been collected. When I say both ways, the way that it's supposed to change starting for school year 2027 and the way it's been historically captured prior to that time. So there is risk around $60 million, which if that were to go away, obviously, or if that were not to materialize, it would have a greater impact to the $150 million deficit that we just spoke of earlier.
Thank you. So moving on to our next topic, keeping up with the time. Our next segment connects the dots between budget and strategy. The chair recognizes Dr. Joseph and his team from the Strategic Planning and Resource Management for PGCPS for the presentation on how your voice directly influences and shapes our strategic plan.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll have Ms. Vanessa Witherington talk to us about the strategic plan and connecting the strategic planning process that we'll be engaged in as we simultaneously work on our budget.
Thank you. Good evening. So we're really excited to write the next chapter of our strategic plan. Your voices influence change here in PGCPS. This is our plan, not just the plan of those on this side of the room, but the community, parents, families, stakeholders, and residents. As we tie together the strategic plan and the conversation tonight around budget, we really want to emphasize and encourage families and students to advocate on behalf of PGCPS, not just on a local level, but as you all have said, at our state and legislative level. We want to charge families, as well as you all. We know we have our warrior, Lolita Walker, who goes down to Annapolis and advocates for us, but we can't do it alone. We want families and students here to share their voices tonight as we go to these breakout sessions, but we really wanted to share how both locally and on a state and legislative level, advocating for change will support our budget and ultimately shape our next strategic plan. Locally, it guides our goals, it helps us build ownership, and it guides local policy. But on a legislative level, we really want to influence those state policies so we can align what we're doing with the state requirements, including state funding formulas, education mandates, teacher certification standards, as well as capital projects. These are all important components of our strategic plan and our budget here at PGCPS. Recently, as of November 6th, we released our budget priority survey. And in line with what our superintendent shared this earlier in the presentation, what our priorities are, including our big rocks, our students, our employees, our residents, and our families and guardians all share the same priorities. Our students are really advocating on behalf of their needs for college and career readiness, and our families and residents, as well as our employees, all have a shared priority around high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. So earlier we talked about the need for deeper professional development, ensuring that we are ramping up our hiring efforts, and really ensuring that we have high quality teachers. So our strategic plan has to be that roadmap of how we're going to get there. And we want to make sure that as we're advocating for our budget, our priorities are also reflected in our strategic plan. We don't want to put things in that plan that we ultimately are going to cut. So we want to be sure that we hear all of you all's voices as we put together the pieces between the budget and the strategic plan. So how are we asking you all to do that? We need you all to be an advocate. Again, the strategic plan is our plan. We want to write the next chapter together. You will hear us say that over and over again. We need you all to lend your voices because the strategic plan succeeds with your input. We've heard from board members already. We will continue to engage families and students and PG County residents. We want you all to take action as you share your voice, participating actively and not just, hoping for change, but really coming out to these town halls, to these forums and sharing your feedback. And we really want you to own the plan to drive positive change at both the district and the state level. We have our climate and culture survey that we recently released, again, our budget survey. We will continue to have the Dollars and Decisions events, and we will have other opportunities for you all to engage with us as well as the wider community to engage with us. There is so much power in stakeholder feedback. So we want your support so that we can make better decisions and use these diverse perspectives to prevent blind spots. We want to deepen our levels of accountability for all of us here at PGCPS. So your input ensures the system meets the community needs. And we want to connect to real-time experiences. Our leaders can't be in every school building and in every place at the same time. So we really need everyone to share their feedback so we can bring our day-to-day insights to inform meaningful and actionable policies. And how can you do that? If you scan this QR code, we will also reach out to you directly, and we're excited to be here tonight. We will be hosting focus groups at the north, central, and south of the county for students and families, and we will also continue to engage you all with our one-on-one meetings with board members, as we have been doing, as we work to refine our mission and vision and core values and connect all of the dots between our budget and our strategic plan. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. We appreciate the presentation. Board members, I'm opening up the floor for questions. Well, all right. Seems that we have have any questions. You did a wonderful job of addressing all of our issues. Thank you so much. All righty, so now moving on to the next item on the agenda. This time, the chair requests that we divide our audience so our students can attend their dedicated session. Students, please exit the room and head into the hall. Our staff, can you raise your hands? They have on yellow shirts back there. Our staff will provide you with instructions and entry into our student budget voice, dollars and decisions breakout session with our student member and board, our student member and Dr. Joseph. Yeah. And parents and guardians, you can remain staying in this section. And at this time, we'll re-adjourn at 7:10. So we're going to take a small break until 7:10. Thank you. I did too. Oh, sorry. No, they had it 35 minutes. Oh, we gotta call the superintendent back though. Thank you all. We're about to get started here again. Alrighty, welcome back. The chair recognizes the board member Lolita E. Walker for the next presentation titled Educate, Advocate, and Act Together.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm surprised I didn't wear my shirt today, you guys. It just dawned on me. I have a sweatshirt and a t-shirt that says it, because today is all about understanding exactly what it means. Thank you. All right, today, let me introduce myself to folks who might not know me, who might be looking online, and those in the room. I'm Lolita E. Walker, and I'm excited to really just talk about this notion of educate, advocate, and act together. It's really around advocacy. It's about what we can do. It's about how we can show up as constituents, as board members, as parents, as a community member, because oftentimes we get questions, oftentimes we get questions about, well, what can I do and how can I show up? So today, I want you to know that I have been a member for the last 3 years of the Policy and Governance Committee led by Dr. Felton Moss. And as we get into, one second, I'm trying to turn it on. Okay. I need help, please. Thank you. I was going to do some karaoke. Perfect, thank you. Excellent. So when you see this, educate, advocate, act together, then I want you all to know that a few years ago, the board began this journey of continued transparency and increased legislative connection. What does that mean? We wanted to establish these relationships with our legislators, meaning our delegates, our senators, and really talk to them about understanding what is important to PGCPS, what is important to the Board of Education, what are our priorities, and the more that they understand, the educate piece, the more that we understand, the more that each of you all can understand, then we can advocate. We can advocate with one voice, and then we can act together. Today, I'm specifically going to be talking about what each of these 4 facets mean, what it looks like, and how we can individually and collectively bring this to life. What we do know is that our schools require stable funding. That's what we do know. We do know that we're underfunded, but if we plan for additional staffing, programs, and interventions, we really need to talk about what it means. So let's start with educate. A lot on this slide, you guys. It is available online in Diligent, but I'll just highlight some key areas for your attention. When we think about educate, it really means ensuring that we have a shared understanding. So what our board is really committed to is first educating ourselves. We've got to know that. We've got to understand what our policies are. We've got to understand what the impact of teaching, learning, and student success is, and so do you, because each one of us teaches each other, and then we can go out together. So what does that look like for you? Well, it looks like us understanding, again, our policies, our budgets, our legislation. And when you see us not showing up in it, you all already do, hold us accountable and tell us where we have gaps. You send in questions like some of the ones that we ask on this dais so that we can make sure you all understand that. We help parents and scholars really understand the why, not just the what. We understand the what. Why is it important is really where our education is seated at the foundation. So how do we bring it to life when we think about educate? We bring it to life by, as Director Weatherspoon was talking about, Weatherington, I'm so sorry, was talking about earlier, is answer our surveys, attend board meetings, community meetings, each of you all here tonight, each of you all looking in, look at the newsletters that are sent out. Make sure you're sending in questions. Literally, I had a District 9 resident send me about 50 questions about our budget, and she expects answers. And so with that, what we do is we ask questions here, but we also send them to PGCPS administration to help us understand why, because education is important. And where will you see it? In my District 9 newsletter, absolutely. Next, we want to go to advocate. Remember, this is more than a slogan. Education is at the foundation of everything. Then we want to advocate. What does that mean? It means understanding and supporting our priorities that are already aligned with PGCPS and the Board of Education. So each person in the room, I believe, has access to our 2026 legislative platform. This is what you can use as your guide as we talk in legislative season. Everyone knows that that's 90 days, beginning in January, going till April. And it's so important that as you think about, even when you talk to your PTAs, your PTOs, understanding what are our 4 core priorities and why they are important, okay? Also, our delegation has this 2026 legislative priorities. Everyone has this. If you are not in the room tonight and you're listening in, it is already online, and you too can download it or at least reference it. That's so important. What does it look like for advocacy? It looks like joining us in building relationships. Do you know who your senators are? Do you know who your delegates are inside of your area? Do you know who your board member is? Do you know where you live, what district you live in? We can help you with all of those things, because at the foundation is understanding, where am I and where does my voice count the most? Super important. How can you advocate? Well, one, join your PTA and your PTOs. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to raise hands inside of the room. I don't want to do that tonight, but I do want to encourage you to join your PTA and PTO. And oftentimes what I hear is, hey, I just don't have time. I'm doing so much and I don't have time. Well, here's the juiciness of it all, okay? Are you ready? You don't have to show up to all the things. You can give money. Sometimes it's only not only for some, I'm not judging. What I'm saying is it's only $25 sometimes for the entire year at some schools. And that really does help, because those dollars, when they're pulled together, really can help inside the classrooms. It can help for supplies. It can help give a boost to some of our teachers. You never know where your dollars are going, but please join. It's showing up. So PTAs and PTOs. You can participate in advocacy days in Annapolis with us. We'll be getting that information out shortly. Writing, you can help us with our writing campaigns, our emails, understanding. If you don't know who your delegates and senators are, no problem, just write to your board member, and we're happy to tell you in our district who you're supported by. For instance, in District 9, we have 4 senators, and we also have 12 delegates. I'm happy to share with you who they are and how we engage with them, and how you too can engage as well. Any board member can talk to you about who you're supported by inside of your district. And of course, submitting testimony. I always hear as well, you all are all the way out in Upper Marlboro, because my district is pretty far away, and I understand, but you know what else you can do? You can send in a video testimonial as well as written, and the same thing can be done at the legislative sessions. This is about advocacy. Next is all about act. This is the action word of it all. This is the verb. This is us doing the work. And what's important on this slide right here is this is where education and advocacy actually turn into action. It turns into movement. It turns into momentum. It turns into the impact that is now measurable. Make sense? Y'all with me? Can you tell I'm an educator? Yeah, you with me? Okay, there'll be a quiz at the end. What it looks like in action. We know that we have crises. We know that we have a budget deficit. We know that folks show up and they see what's not happening right in the schools. We are hoping that folks are going to show up not only in the midst of crises, but in the midst of when things are going well. We need that balance. Acting is engaging, having a solutions-focused mindset, because we can't do it all. We can't think of it all. And the beauty is that you as constituents, you as parents, you as community members are right there on the front lines, and you can help us to come up with solutions-focused ideas. We want to turn our concerns into contributions and do this together. You can volunteer at your school. You can participate in public forums. You can talk to other scholars, other families inside of your district. So many small things that equal the big impact that we want to make as we educate, advocate, and act together. Lastly, I want to talk to you about what together looks like. Together is really our multiplier. That is us not only having one voice that can sometimes be silenced, but it's us having a collective voice. We recognize that there's power in numbers. We've seen the advocacy turn into action, and when we do those together, then it's just amazing. One voice can unintentionally be dismissed, but our unity is going to continue to build trust and momentum as we go up. and go out. So before I turn it over to my colleagues, Pam Boozer-Struther and Amy Olivo, I just wanted to remind us that when we show up as a united Prince George's County, then we are doing the work. We are educating, advocating, and acting together. Make sense? All right, any questions? Oh. We're doing questions? I don't know. Our chair is going to tell us.
So we're not taking questions from the audience, but we will have public comment later. Okay? All right. Any questions from the board? All righty. Moving on to our next mini presentation would be Board Member Boozer-Struthers, how to fight back.
Good evening, everyone. Pamela Boozer-Struther, District 3. I want to welcome everyone to this special meeting. There's a couple different titles for my presentation. There's How to Fight Back is, I think, based on something I said at the last board meeting about the $150 million budget gap and going to Annapolis, and because there had been some cuts to our budget. The other I try to think of as how to fight for, meaning our children, meaning our system, meaning the employees. And then the latest title on the printout is My Journey to Advocacy. So that is actually what I'm talking about. And I hope that telling my story as an advocate might resonate with our parents and guardians in the room, but also parents watching that. I think, being involved as a parent can feel, and Board Member Walker mentioned about the time, and can you participate individually with the time that you have? And I say absolutely yes. My journey started with noticing other parents advocating in PGCPS, the My Bilingual Child advocacy across the county that led to the start of the 3 Spanish immersion schools. And that took effort to connect with individual parents who thought now is the time for that type of program expansion in PGCPS. And I noted that, and I thought, wow, like that's really great. They're, getting some, speaking up, and it happened. But then I became a parent in an elementary school, and I did a lot of the classic parent advocacy internally. So it starts inside the building. You note things as a parent you want to contribute to, or you ask the principal about, well, why are things the way they are? And then you start to learn. And became a PTA officer, and but then I kind of started to do some things individually. The principal at the time, who's still with PGCPS, Sean Hintz, said to me, you seem really interested in the bigger picture of PGCPS. I'm gonna, why don't you go represent us at county meetings? And so I learned how to give budget testimony. So I didn't know anything about this 3-minute public comment. I had to learn that. I mean, so you learn new things. I cared about arts, and we were doing a lot of, we were Title I school. This is pre-Blueprint for Maryland's Future funding. If we wanted something special for our children, like after school or in school, we had to raise the money. And so the previous superintendent had launched this arts integration methodology to bring arts back, and we got really excited at Mount Rainier Elementary, and that's what we raised money for. So the budget comes out, it's a PDF, and I was so excited that I could search the word art, and I could learn about the funding for arts in PGCPS. Like this was, and again, I just want to say it was all new to me. I didn't get here to the Board of Education knowing everything at all. Like I, did it all, talked to parents, but as I mentioned, I was kind of sent out to go to meetings on our behalf. And I started to go to these school construction related meetings. Some were like minor boundary changes, some were about emerging projects and where would they be placed. And I remember going one night to a meeting, and the issue of funding, of course, was coming up. This is when Dr. Maxwell had documented the $8 billion backlog, and there were, folks were beginning to talk about it. And so I went up to a representative from PGCPS, and I'll say, as a parent at the time, central administration was a total mystery to me. I didn't know anyone. I didn't really know anyone. I didn't know titles, names. And so, don't feel bad if you don't know this and it's a process. So I went up to someone and I said, oh, when's the PGCPS lobby night for this? Because as a resident, I was going to Annapolis for, I think, environmental issues and some others, organized lobby nights. And I remember the person saying to me, oh, we don't do that. And I was like, that's not good. I was like, there's a disconnect here, and I want to find out what it is. And so school construction was really what propelled me beyond my school building. So what do you want to change and help with in your school building? And what are the bigger issues for PGCPS? Where'd our blue book go? Here it is. Oh. And so, but I didn't have the benefit of the blue book. And this book today, if I had known if this had existed, that we had to organize lobbying in Annapolis at this level that we do today, and I want to thank years of colleagues. Like we got here year over year, and now we're just at such an excellent place. I would have found what I care about in here, and I would have learned what the messages are. And so I want to say to you, if you have time to do it individually, time to do it collectively with your school community, you have the resources now, and I'm really grateful for that. And so I then, I haven't reached the point where I decided I wanted to run for the board, but what came next was really important, the Kerwin Commission that led to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future legislation. And that was like late 2017, 18, when the content was being talked about, things that we always would hear about, dreams of universal pre-K, dreams of community school funding where you have, mental health services and aftercare that was funded. And, we just didn't have any of that yet. But our teachers were telling me as a parent, I can't educate children who come to school with an ear infection that they cannot get medical care for. So teachers were telling the parents, like, some of these, like, we need health care and mental health and services to be able to educate. So I was getting those messages in the building from PGCEA members and parent engagement assistants that I was able to take to this advocacy. But I really want to mention there's this independent organization called Strong Schools Maryland. And that organization came online to organize everyone kind of as independent public school advocates in the state of Maryland. And I became part of now a statewide network. But it started with a team of 10, some teachers, public school parents, and education advocates in my community literally sat around a table. We would receive a monthly packet from Strong Schools to take us through where this Kerwin Commission was headed. And again, it became the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which I think, is much better known now. But it was through that kind of, it became community-based. And Strong Schools Maryland is still here. They have a newsletter. They organize, they educate and organize for your work in Annapolis. PGCPS, being the second largest school system, of course, has great influence in a lot of the issues of concern. City of Baltimore, we share. So you will see our two counties really showing up with Strong Schools Maryland, but we need more. And that is another way to get to Annapolis in addition to with your board. And, in 2019, we actually hosted and our bus drivers took us to Annapolis for a rally, for a statewide rally. We closed the streets of Annapolis in 2019 for passage of the Blueprint. Not everyone was committed yet. Some of our legislators right here in our community they weren't on the record yet. And we did have to, and that's where we say, oh, we did fight, but it took the unity of the superintendent, Dr. Goldson at the time, the chair of the board, Dr. Alvin Thornton, president of PGCEA, Teresa Dudley. The three of them together said, we are a united team. And I think that is essential. And you don't always feel it all the time, but going into this legislative session, it's critical. And I am hoping that we will show that same unity, and I feel confident that we will. So I just wanted to demonstrate to any parent who might be new, maybe you're a pre-K or kindergarten parent wondering how you get involved, or you're a parent who, walked in, as, some of the parents who like walk into a high school and are like, I really want to help with these bathrooms, or I want that traffic light to get in and out so I don't wait 20 minutes to turn left in or out of my 2,400 seat high school. You might have a single issue. Guess what? It is in here, and we know it's an issue, and we can tell you what you're saying to your legislators about funding it. And so I encourage the use of the book, getting involved, and just knowing that it is okay if you don't know everything when you start. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely presentation.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
And I echo her sentiment about just mobilizing. We are only as strong as the constituents that we represent. So if we're the only people in Annapolis asking for things, it doesn't seem like it's a real need. But if we have, 1,000 parents and, friends of PGCPS that's with us in Annapolis, they have to listen to us. So we definitely want to mobilize. And they say, apathy is the Achilles of democracy. So we have to stay connected and stay, motivated to get out and not just post things on social media and then go to sleep. Like, that's going to change something. We got to definitely get out there and mobilize. But with that being said, I'll pause for my counterparts. Does anyone have any comments on this presentation? Board Member Brown.
Thank you so much for your wisdom. It means a lot. It says a lot, and it's very encouraging for the parents who don't know what this space looks like and how to navigate it. It can be intimidating, but our voice does matter, and being a fellow parent on the school board, it means a lot to hear your sentiments, and it means a lot to hear your advocacy work and what you do, and this was great, so thank you.
Board Member Walker.
Yep, and this will be real quick. I love that you told your story, because I think there's an assumption that we all knew what board members did or what we were supposed to do. I'll just share that I was a PTO leader. When you have bright ideas at the school, you end up in a leadership role. Yep. So I was on my PTA, and I remember boundary issues were happening around Accokeek Academy, which also is a specialty school, and I didn't really understand what everybody was up in arms about. So I said, who can I talk to? And they said, Sonia Williams. She's the Board of Education member. And I'm like, well, what does she do? Literally. And I remember working with her and having her come to my PTA meetings. So I'm sharing this with you all to say that you can start at any level. It's literally a question. And when you ask your school board member, then don't worry, we'll pull you right on in for advocacy.
If there are no further questions, we'll move on to Board Member Olivo. And she will talk about what to say parent role play demonstration.
Thank you so much, Chair Jackson. My name is Amy Olivo. I'm a proud 15-plus year PGCPS parent. Also started way back when asking questions, ended up becoming a PTA president, and have continued since then. So my hope is that by the time you've gotten to me and my brief presentation, you've been riled up by my colleagues, Board Member Walker and Board Member Boozer-Strother, to know that you are a crucial voice to our elected officials, and that your voice is important. So as Board Member Walker began to share, we all have one state senator that we are represented by. And then we all here in Prince George's County have either 1, 2, or 3 state delegates. And of course, Governor Moore represents all of us. If you aren't sure who represents you, you can absolutely email any of us and we'll be glad to tell you. But you can also go to maryland.gov. I tested this out because the link was super long. So I just went to maryland.gov and I just typed in the search bar, who represents me? And the website comes right up where you can put your address in and you can find out exactly who your state senator and your state delegates are. So that you become, if you aren't already familiar with them, you can get all of their information, see a picture of them. They live in your community, they live in our communities. You might see them out at church or in the shopping mall. A lot of them are having town halls right now, which you can go to. That's a great chance to meet and talk with them and share your thoughts as well. Pamela and I were just at the District 47 Town Hall this past Saturday. And the question is, what should you say? I think we've heard a lot from my colleagues about that. You can just share your story. You don't have to have everything completely perfectly composed. Our state legislators want to hear from us. They represent us. They go to Annapolis on our behalf for 90 days every year in the General Assembly session. And they really do want to hear what their constituents think. It's important to let them know where you live, that you are a constituent of theirs, and then to simply share your personal story. One of the things that I have said many, many times over the years to my state senator and delegates is that, I'm a PGCPS parent. We're really invested in the public schools. My children have been taught by phenomenal teachers, incredible administrative staff at their schools, and they've been educated in schools that feel like they're literally crumbling down around them. And that is the truth of my family's experience. My kids have been at 8 different public schools over their careers. I have a PGCPS graduate and a 10th grader, and they've both got a really incredible education from their teachers, from really caring staff, but their school buildings were awful. Neither of them have benefited from attending any of our new schools, which I joke like I'm out here fighting so hard for things that my own children won't actually get to benefit from. But of course, I'm so grateful that other children will get to benefit from them. But I think that's a really powerful message, and that's my personal family's truth about our experience in Prince George's County Public Schools. So think about what your story is. Pamela shared a little bit about how she got involved and what her story is, and all of those stories together collectively tell the picture of Prince George's County Public Schools to our elected officials. We also need to share with them, as this is straight from Dr. Joseph's mouth, to move from pockets of excellence to excellence everywhere, we need sustained investment. So I asked very specifically at the end of the budget presentation for Chief Howell to share the percentages. So 59% of our PGCPS budget comes from the state. We heard Dr. Moss point out the fact that because of what essentially comes down to an accounting or clerical decision, we are at risk of losing $60 million for our farm students. These are really important pieces of information, and our advocacy around them absolutely can make a difference. And I think the final thing that I really want to emphasize when you do have the opportunity to speak to an elected official, because who will tell you that they're not going to support education? Every single one of our elected officials is going to say that they support education. But we must really ask them the very specific question: can I count on your support for full funding of PGCPS? I spent the first 20-ish years of my career in fundraising. And the number one thing that's pounded into you as a fundraiser is you have to make the ask. And it's uncomfortable, and it's really hard sometimes to make that very direct ask, but it's just as important here because, of course, all of our senators and delegates and the governor are going to say, of course I support public education. But we have to ask that specific question, will you support full funding? That's all you need to say. If you have the details that are in this blue book, if you have some of the talking points that we're going to email out, of course you can get into all of those. But asking the question, can I count on you? Can my PGCPS students count on you for your support for full funding of PGCPS is an absolutely crucial piece to your conversation with your state senator and delegates. So I just want to let you know, by attending this meeting, you're of course, you get our emails, you're on our lists. We will have opportunities for email campaigns, letter writing campaigns, and to physically come with us to Annapolis. We hope that you'll join us. We hope that you'll think in advance about if you see your state senator or delegates at a town hall or out in the community or at their district night in Annapolis, that you'll think about these things and what you will say to them. And we really ask that, in addition to many other issues that you might care about, that you ask them for their support of full funding for Prince George's County Public Schools. Thank you very much.
I'll open up the floor for board members if we have any questions or comments. Yeah, is that Board Member Brown? Or is that Walker? Oh, that's you? Okay. Board Member Boozer Struthers?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Board Member Levo, who's been on this journey with me as well. My son's now 10th grade. The one thing that you just made me think about, and that this $150 million gap is the advocacy. If the legislature does not fill this gap with the funding, what our children will lose. And one way to do that is tax and revenue reform and the work that a group called Fair Share Maryland is doing. And I was wondering if you have some more insights into helping all of us speak to that side of the equation, that the governor has been very resistant to, the very simple, phrase of raising taxes, but taxes can be done very differently, that equitable taxation isn't just raising taxes. So I was wondering if you have some additional information on that.
Thanks, Board Member Boozer-Strother. I think that's such a good question. I was sharing, I think, my personal dismay with you recently that Governor Moore has already come out with a very strong statement that there will be no tax increases, and I have been curious about whether that also includes the sort of progressive tax reform that some of us are looking for, especially with combined reporting for corporations and taxing our largest corporations who pay almost no Maryland state taxes appropriately. I don't have insight, but I wish I did. But I think that's something we should definitely explore and potentially include in our talking points and advocacy message out to parents and families. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I want to take the moment to thank my colleagues for their presentations tonight, with respect to advocacy, and also employ those who are in the audience tonight to be super vigilant around, what happens beyond a gubernatorial election year or the election of delegates and senators in our state. The budget issue that is impending now, while it has some respect for this academic year, it has consequences later. Just last year, the General Assembly appeased our aggressive appetite for no cuts to Blueprint in a very systematic way that deferred this issue a couple of years. And so while in an election year, our elected officials, will do work to calm us down once they've been given 4-year terms, what you could potentially see is a change in this. And so this is probably not smart for me to be saying this on a video, but as an educator first, I think it's important for me to make it clear to people that I have no doubt we'll get out of this year peacefully. What concerns me about where we are is what will happen subsequent to this legislative session, when tougher cuts have to be made. I won't get into a discussion around taxes and trim. 1970 did a work on us, but it's unimaginable to believe that we can give kids an excellent education without making some type of tax sacrifice. And I'll just close these comments and say what I said just a few minutes ago, which is my larger argument. And if Dr. Thornton is listening, he'll appreciate this lesson that he gave me that I'll never forget, that as you raise accountability expectations on young people, so should you be increasing inputs. If you have higher expectations for outputs, that means you've got to do something in terms of inputs. And so as we consistently raise expectations on outputs, and I agree that we should be, a hyper focus on resources and inputs are also necessary. And so that is a quick argument that I believe my colleagues and I on the board will continue to take to the General Assembly during this legislative session. But I'm not worried about today as much as I am tomorrow, because folks won't be on the ballot after next year.
Any more questions or comments? Alrighty. So we are going to take a brief recess and wait until our you got a comment? Okay. All right, well, we have one more comment by Dr. Moss.
Yeah, I just wanted to say everything I was trying to tell you. If I had a shirt that was black and a sweater, it would say educate, advocate, act together. I just want to make sure I respect our mantra on the board that everything I was saying was educate, advocate, and act together. I meant to say it at the end and I forgot to. School of Lolita Walker.
Board Member Boozer Struther.
Yeah, since we have a little extra time, I wanted to just read from something I found in the Greenbelt News, January 2nd, 1992. I was searching for how Eleanor Roosevelt High School got their left-hand turn traffic signal because we so desperately need one at Northwestern High School, where we don't need a name change bill, we need resources. Thank you for clapping. It's really serious. It's much more serious than the bill sounds, and we hope you will join us in opposing this bill. But the little article was right on the front page, and it was like this big, and it was school budget cuts prompt January 8th rally in January 1992. Teachers, parents, and various organizations supported by the Prince George's County Board of Education are gearing up for a rally in front of the State House in Annapolis on Wednesday, January 8th at 6:30 p.m. The groups are urging county citizens to join them and sending the Maryland General Assembly a message: be courageous, raise taxes to support education. And then it goes on to tell the residents to make phone calls. And then you may show your support by writing or phoning your legislators to protect cuts in the education budget. And a newly formed coalition, Parents, Leaders, and Educators Demanding Good Education, called Pledge, is also spearheading a drive to lobby the legislature for better educational funding during the upcoming session. And so I want to say that even though it hasn't felt like it every year, the Board of Education and parents have been a significant lobby and lobby effort in Annapolis, and that we should never shy away from having that type of presence. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Walker.
Yes, I'm just hoping, can anybody from administration confirm that we're still doing the interactive piece tonight? Do you all know? Okay. Oh,
Hold on, when you mean interactive, you're talking about, are we going
The
to
game?
take public comment?
no,
Though the game?
the game.
No. The kids are coming back. Dr. Moss? Okay, all right. You want to go again? We're just waiting until the students come back. That's what we're waiting. Killing time. Go for it. Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I didn't have anything else to say, but I'd be remiss. We've talked about all these folks and the work that we've done here, but there are two parent leaders in the audience who joined us in Annapolis last year. And I want to make sure, we've got Tim and Candace in the audience. We'd be remiss if we didn't honor them. Is Candace still here? Perkins from District 9? I see her hand back there. But both of them went to Annapolis with the board last year to help us fight back on Blueprint. So I just want to make sure I honor and recognize them. Who did?
Dolores Millhouse. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we were just saying people who have been mobilizing and fighting a good fight.
If you all can stand up in the audience for our parents, Dolores Millhouse, we have Candace Perkins and Tim Green for being, Meyer, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
I would like to add Miss Wright in there too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you
Oh, my
gotta
goodness,
put
sorry, Miss Wright.
Miss Wright in there as well.
And we know that she fights the good fight.
Yeah. It's a good thing that the kids are so engaged that they are hesitant to come back so fast. You know, we have some really good young people that don't get the credit that they deserve, doing some amazing things. So our student board member is very impressive. Board member Ari Achikaye. Need to move to public comments and then wait for them to come back. Looking like the Ohio State coach. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. All right, so we now warmly welcome our students back from their dedicated breakout sessions. As you all come on in the door, yeah. And so I want to recognize, I was just talking you up to, Ari. I would say we have a pretty amazing student board member, Ari, who just came back from cold Chicago, and I'm sure she has some very cool insight to share with you about her experiences, not only there but here today, as to talk about your breakout session and things that you guys take away from this session.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So first I'll start with the session, since it's something that we recently just, finished right now. We did get a lot of insights, and we got a lot of questions answered from all the students that attended. So thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate you all. So of course, we first learned about, about the funding, and that we can actually advocate for more funding down in Annapolis during Advocacy Day next year, March 13th. We also learned that the federal grants, we have $24 million for services such as mental health services. So, those type of services will not be cut in our operation budget cuts that are happening with the $150 million currently. We learned that each school funding is different. So, the way the budget will affect each school will be different from a case-by-case basis. And we learned that the state doesn't fund, the Division of Academics determines what school needs as it relates to specialty programs, and that the AI data centers at the old Landover site will not be necessarily connected or affect our operating budget. And as it relates to the conference in Chicago, the NABC conference, I learned so much from, educators from all across the county as it relates to math education, so teaching students how to do productive struggles. I also learned about, I also imparted some knowledge as well, I'd like to say. So a lot of people, in a lot of states, they don't have student board members. And, they were really surprised to see that I was the only student there amongst all those adults. So I did give them a lot of resources as it relates to creating their own student board member in their various states and various districts. Other things I learned, of course, how to network with other people, just sitting around the table and talking about their day-to-day experiences with students. But then I also taught them from the students' perspective, so how students see things in the classrooms from, the student view as well. And that is pretty much all that I have to say for my recap, so thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. So now we'll move to our engagement piece, because we do want to hear from the audience, our parent community, and we want to hear from you guys personally. So we're going to move to kind of like a public comment space. So I just want to reiterate the rules that we typically have, even though this is a special meeting, to our speakers. So it will be 2 minutes, not to be transferred to another individual speaker. Speakers are expected to refrain from using profanity or derogatory language. A warning will be issued once. Continued misconduct may result in the speaker being muted or removed from the meeting. To support a professional and courteous environment, speakers are encouraged to refer to individuals by their titles, such as chair, board, member, superintendent, or principal, rather than by name. This evening, we will hear from 15 speakers. For anyone unable to speak this evening, board staff are available to record your information and questions so we can ensure you receive your response. You can locate any of them in the yellow t-shirts. Again, we have the yellow t-shirts. Crew over there is our community liaisons. We have a distinguished panel of presenters answering your questions this evening, including our Office of Budget representatives, members of the Executive Cabinet, and our interim superintendent, and my fellow board members and I. If you have a question or comment, I please ask you to proceed to the podium. And when you come up to the podium, y'all can proceed now. And when you come up to the podium, share your first name and the question, and we'll cut it off at 15. Yep. To ensure we hear as many people as possible, we kindly ask you to limit your input to one question or comment per person. Please note that the buzzer will sound, and when you hear the buzzer, know that it's time to stop. Finally, we are joined by our Office of Accountability and Strategic Planning, who are diligently capturing all audience sentiment this evening. So you can proceed.
Good afternoon, board members and superintendent. I'm Amanda Wallace. I am president of the PTO at Barack Obama Elementary School, as well as ethics panel advisory appointed member, and as well as I also am a professor at University of Maryland University College, among other things that I do. That's none of my full-time job, just by the way. So a couple of comments. So 2 weeks ago, I have been informed that funding was pulled overnight from schools with no advance warning. That now results in things being, such as trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to pay for software that funding was earmarked for, and trying to pull funds from other areas. That was a surprise by me, because I thought that we were actually in the determining factor of being decisions, not actually decided. And so what that causes is that, number one, for me, substitute teachers possibly are gone, more leaning on the PTO organizations, as well as making sure that we try to figure out how do we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps middle of the year. And furthermore, I also just want to kind of talk about the fact that we need to look and consider consolidation of the budget, looking at our IT contracts, making sure that enterprise objectives also match with those strategic IT objectives. Because when we talk about technology resources, they are not equitable across all schools. Some of the schools even have different experiences, where I have nephews in one school and I have my kids in another, and their experience across Prince George's County has been starkly different. I think that we need to make sure that we standardize and baseline what principals should have access to, which is standardized IT, those things, but we also should not be pulling some budget decisions from the principals, and we should be removing the red tape around funding and resources that we are able to give our students, such as after-school programs. That needs to be to the principals and not to a unfunctioning area where you cannot get approved vendors inside the schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Wendy.
Yeah. Wait one moment. We did want to pause, and we are addressing it. So this is a back and forth engagement. So I don't know if any of the staff want to address any of the questions that were asked during
Or
this comment
comments. If
session.
y'all have any comments, that's fine.
Yes, I can speak to the restriction of some of the spending that was pulled back from all the cost centers. So when we looked at our discretionary spend across the district for schools specifically, we focused on non-instructional areas. It was really around conference, registration fees, non-local travel, and catering. Those were the areas that we pulled. The principals still have access to their budgets to realign funds as they need to. As you can imagine, when we're looking at an exercise of this magnitude for 200 schools, we're looking at accounting codes. And so if we see non-local travel, we assume that it's for non-local travel. Registration expense, you assume it's for a conference or something along those lines. If maybe money was tucked into one of those accounts for something else, there's not the ability to determine by the accounting code that it was maybe for something other than what it was intended for. There is an exception process that schools had the option that if they needed to have the funds restored, they could work through their school leadership, through the school leadership team, and have those requests submitted. And if they were approved, then the funding would be restored for those activities. But we did not pull costs for substitutes and, technology and things of that nature. So it was really specific on non-instructional items that were pulled back.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that, from my understanding, it came as a surprise to some principals where that discretionary funds were spent or they were being earmarked for IT resources. So we were trying to make an investment to make sure that the students had an application for them to, I want to say it was iExcel or one of those, and that money or the discretionary spending was supposed to be used towards that. Now, knowing that there is, the ability to get that money restored, that money also was to help the principals make sure that they actually had, or at least for our school, had adequate resource, and if they needed to pull teachers out the classroom, where they had a floating resource around there, but now that floating resource is unavailable because those discretionary funds were also being used for that. So I think as far as making sure that we are communicating and that those decisions, when we're having this conversation, and I felt like we were in the midst of making a decision, but then only to find out that certain decisions had already been made. And in addition to that, just listening and just looking at, our priorities, we really need better alignment strategically, and that's top down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I will follow up with the chief of schools with regards to Barack Obama specifically, because again, the funds that were pulled were very specific to certain areas, but some of the ones you've mentioned were not dollars that were pulled back. So I will follow up and pass on that information.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Wendy, and this is honestly my very first time being here. And thank you. And I'll be honest with you, I made it my business to come here because just the title of tonight's event irked my nerve, respectfully. I've been in this county all my life. My children are in this county. And it's funny how this county does not have enough money for education, but there's always millions available to be stolen. So with that being said, I saw y'all touch on special education. I have a son that's special needs, and I'm ready to pull him out because every year since middle school, I've requested that he get speech therapy. They cannot keep a speech pathologist in there. It's always somebody new every single year. And for a child on the spectrum, that's not okay. Every time it's a new person, they get used to one person, then there's another one. Transportation is another thing for me. It's an ongoing thing, and every year is, we have this app. It's not working. And so at what point in time do people start being held accountable? You want to do budget cuts? Start cutting budgets at the employers' levels, from the highest administrator going up as far as principals, because if they are not doing what they're supposed to for their school, why do they still have a job? At any other place, if you're not, pulling your weight, you get let go. And sometimes it has to do with popularity. When it comes to the PTAs, I just volunteered at my son's school because they had their Christmas dance. When I asked, is there anybody within the special ed department that, helps with events, there's nothing. We have a PTO, but they're more engaging to the general ed, which I don't really like to use because, they're still students and they should be engaging at some level. So the PTOs are not geared to creating events for them. So, I have a lot of things and we don't have enough time. So, like I said, this is my very first time, but I'm going to get to know and learn how this board works and who I'm going to have to reach out to. I don't have a problem going to Annapolis with you. My point is, talk is cheap, actions speak louder than words. And so if I'm going to come to advocate with you, I need to see the action and where it's happening, if that makes sense.
Thank you. So wait for a second. We're going to allow our administration to address some of your questions.
Can I say one more thing too? I'm sorry, I have one. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to allow the administration to take that question.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I would just simply say I agree with you that accountability is important, and we are due and say need to be consistent, and that's what we're working towards.
Can I talk? Can I say? Oh, it's still on. Sorry, my bad. So the other thing too, right, is with the hiring of you're the interim, but I don't know if you've been fully hired, but I also know that the previous one is still being paid, if I'm not mistaken, 2-3 year salary. Where's that money coming from, and is that affecting the education part of this county? Because another thing that happened when my child was in elementary school, I had to walk into his classroom with the wall being cut from the height of this table going down and insulation out with mold in it, and as a parent, I had not been even informed, and I can promise you that at that school, which is Dodge Park Elementary, there haven't been changes made. So I'm just, wondering, how do a parent gets information on the changes that are going on in the schools? I mean, building new schools is good.
Thank you. Dr. Coleman, you want to answer that question?
So thank you so much for your comments. I heard two areas related to operations. The first was with respect to transportation. And please know that we are continuing to work to try to make our system more efficient. I know you've heard that before. But we're taking a data-based approach, and we have been for the past 2.5 years now, that is actually showing by the data improvement in our ability to deliver safe, consistent transportation. I would ask that you re-engage with the application Chipmunk. We did sunset the Stop Finder app. We actually are migrating the last group of families, schools, and bus lots into Chipmunk this week. So coming back from the winter break, re-engage with the Chipmunk app. It is a much more stable system that works more effectively and will allow you to consistently track the bus. So we just ask you to try again. And if you run into concerns with the app, there is a space to give feedback just in the app itself. And we're monitoring that feedback from families and making improvements utilizing the data. With respect to I noted Dodge Park Elementary School, I'm not aware of any specific concerns. You said something about mold, but I'll have the team check into the building to ensure that if there needs to be some remediation done, that we're on top of that.
Well, I just brought that up as a reference. This was 10 years ago, and I can tell you and assure you that the COO of that time, during that time that happened, because I also reached out to her, because I was going to reach out to every individual that I could possibly reach out to, because that was not a good thing. And that was Monica Goldson. So I can promise you, if you all went in there to look, not many changes have been made. Another school is Columbia Park Elementary. Now, I'm no longer in that area, but that's the Landover area, and there needs some things to be looked into in those schools. They're older, and their libraries need to be updated as well.
So we want to take this opportunity to introduce you to your board member, Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like you just said you're not in the area anymore, but I am the board member for both Dodge Park and Columbia Park Elementary, so I thank you for raising those. I have been in Columbia Park recently, but not Dodge Park, so I'll make sure to do a visit there. I don't know if you would want to share where your son is now, and if you don't, that's completely fine, but know that we're all, here to help and support you.
We're in Upper Marlboro now, but those are schools where my kids did start.
Yep.
So I know that the areas are not, in the nicer areas, so those get pushed to the back, and, we got to appease these areas, so I'm just being straight up.
I appreciate
respectfully.
it. I'm
Thank you.
definitely advocating for those schools in those areas. That's where I live as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, everyone. Timothy Meyer. I have a little bit of practice with this. First of all, for Annapolis, sign me up for whenever PGCPS needs me to be there. I will be there in Annapolis, planning to spend a lot of time there this upcoming session. I wanted to make sure that the board, PGCPS employees, and other parents are invited to Blueprint Night. Is going to be on February 9th. Blueprint, board member from District 3 mentioned the work that Strong Schools Maryland does, and Blueprint Night is an annual night and rally that is organized by Strong Schools Maryland. So from 6 o'clock to 8, there's a rally out on Lawyers Mall just outside the Capitol. And then we go in and watch some of the legislative session. Already starting to run out of time here, so I just want to make sure that we talk about Chief Howell consistently pulls out magic tricks to make our budget balanced and to find the money. But at some point, we have to talk about, we have a revenue problem. And we're going to need to, and some of the board members talked about this, we are going to need to generate additional dedicated revenue for education. And I plan to spend quite a bit of time campaigning over the next couple of months on, specifically on the issue that we have to have a conversation about trim in the county. And there's also a supplemental education line item on our property taxes that there was a debate about a decade ago about adjusting that number, and we need to have that debate again, or else Chief Howell's going to be back in the same situation year after year. One thing that you'll hear from a lot of legislators is the excuse that we're in an election year, so we can't talk about revenue. The reality is, I'm encouraging all parents to not take that excuse. There's 47 different legislative districts in Maryland. There's about 2 or 3 that are going to be within 10% in a general election this year. For most of the legislators that we're going to be lobbying, they are more at risk of losing a primary because they did not support public education and full funding than they are of losing their seat in the general election. So you're going to hear that excuse over and over, that, because I've already heard it, that it's an election year. Don't accept that excuse. And I ran out of time for my other points, but.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody wanted to address any of those comments on the board or from the administration. Dr. Moss?
No, we appreciate you extending and availing yourself again. As I mentioned earlier, you and Candace came to Annapolis with us and went door by door to every senator and delegate's office. And I think that's the kind of leadership, we need from folks that are helping us out all the time. You heard my soapbox tangent about trim. I don't know that you and I are in different places on that. I think we're in the right place on it. But other folks may not be where we are on it. So I appreciate you calling that out in terms of that work, in terms of our own revenue streams and finding ways to do that. I think it's critically important. As I said earlier, expectations have been raised, but inputs are not where we're expecting outputs to be. And so at some point, we've got to be able to do that. So again, I just can't say thank you enough for your testimony in Annapolis. And I want to encourage parents, if you're looking for another parent partner to help you even testify in Annapolis, Tim's a good person to really lean on. He was there with us every step of the way during the last session.
I'm glad that you mentioned the delegation, because I also like to, just doing the math, if the governor or anyone wants to cut education funding, they have to get 24 votes. The number is 47 Senate districts. They have to get 24 votes to do it. And we have 8 senators who are from Prince George's County, which means as long as if we can keep our block of Prince George's senators committed, senators and delegates, and frankly, the Senate is the problem. The House is generally behind us on these types of funding issues. That was the case last year. But if we can keep 8 Prince George's County senators together, there's a math problem for any cuts, because that gets us not all the way there, but that's 1/3 of the votes that we need in order to protect the current funding. And just the last thing I'll say is that, and I don't know if anyone else from PGCPS wanted to say anything either, but one of the messages going into this year, I think, is hold harmless. There's a lot of things that are up in the air with federal uncertainty. The ask is, at least for fiscal year 27, is to give us time to figure some of these issues out. At least hold harmless on the funding that is at risk. So those are the 2 key words for other parents to remember when they lobby their legislators.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, and thank you, I do agree we have a revenue challenge. The past 2 years, our county has not given us more than the minimum required, and that's problematic. When you look around the region, everyone else had increases above the basic minimum. And so, as we negotiated our contracts this year and increased an additional 110 million on our budget, we're going to need, assistance. It has to be a collective one Prince George's County, and we'll have to work collaboratively to do that. So we've been working, as we've been working to speak to the community, also to speak with, our local leaders, for the information and education about what other jurisdictions have done in the past few years, and why, if we don't have additional dollars this year, we'll be falling further behind as others are working. So it has to be a collective effort, and so it's going to take collective advocacy.
Yeah, and I definitely want to, underscore the sentiment of, revenue generation. These are hard times, and they say I guess the father of, what they say, I forgot, but anyway, but it's hard times, so we got to be creative. I think it's like the necessity is the father of creativity or something to that extent. But basically, we have to be creative on how we move forward as a school system. Just because, like, the old way of the past, just being independent, I think that's obsolete. We have to be more creative and take a more, and I hate to say this with education at the same time, but more like a business approach to how we make sure we can serve our customers, which is our students and our families, a world-class education. So we definitely have to find new ways and innovative ways to stay relevant and take care of everyone. But I do see there's a few board members who have some comments. Is that you, Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I failed to say this, and I thought the superintendent might say it in his comments, but I'll say it now. Megan Thornton, who is our deputy chief of staff now, as of tomorrow, the board will launch an advocacy newsletter for the 90-day legislative session, something that we've not done in the past, that will update you on what's happening in Annapolis and also give you the talking points that are aligned in real time to everything that's going on. First iteration is tomorrow. I think delegates and senators also will get a document weekly that will outline the budget impacts that happen to PGCPS, and I know the superintendent had asked the team to work on that. So I just want to flag, you will get that as well. So not just delegates and senators, but you'll get that information starting tomorrow.
Board Member Walker?
Yeah, just real quick, I see that we have another comment as well. Since we're giving shout outs, as the board liaison to the PCAC, I just wanted to say that we have a PCAC advisory board who also was instrumental in going to Annapolis. If you don't know what that is, then make sure you know who your liaison is for District 9. It is Candace Perkins, who is here. It is Parent Community, and then we also have DIAB, which is also an advisory group as well, which is Disabilities Issue Advisory Board. One day I'm not going to know these acronyms, so I'm glad I passed the test today. So before Dolores Millhouse talks, who's also the president of the PCAC, I just wanted to make sure that when we talk about advocacy, we also have to recognize the groups that are in touch with our communities beyond where it is that we stand, and who also advise the board and also hang out with us to make sure that they are helping to also drive, educate, advocate, act together. Thanks.
Any more? Okay. Next up.
Okay. Hi. Good afternoon, good evening, good day. I have a couple of things. Just make it real quick, 2 minutes. So from the board action summary, this is to the administration. The item states, when formulating FY 2026 requested budget, only one bargaining unit had a ratified contract in place. And then it also states that there was a $55.1 million that was added to the budget to reflect these changes. So I want to know that when this budget was moved forward and it was approved, did we have enough money to cover the negotiated contracts? So that's a question to the administration, and then to the board itself as it relates to your, I think it's an amendment process. That's really not a process. What are you all going to do to make sure that when you are asking for things to be added to the budget, you make sure that there's no physical impact? Because the responsibility falls on you all. Once the treasurer of the board submits it to you all, then you all have to approve what is in the balanced budget. But if we don't manage the money and we then bust the budget, then we're in a situation and we don't have anybody to blame but ourselves. So I got time. You got the clock back.
I can answer the question around negotiations, how we budget for that. When we were developing the formulated budget last year, we took into consideration the impact of what was being negotiated for the employees who were on hand at that time. And as you know, we've had vacancies for a period of time. So who would have been able to forecast, 6 months later, that the number of folks on hand would be greater than what we planned for in 2026. So as you sort of look at what you have at that point in time, you calculate the impact of that and you capture it in the budget and you balance accordingly. And that's what we did. Now that we have higher vacancies, more filled positions than we planned for, you have the impact of that increase now impacting our budget for this current year. So that's how we're experiencing that spending pressure in 2026, because we just have more filled positions than we anticipated.
So the question is, are we able to absorb the cost of what we agreed upon for that contract? That's the question.
Yeah, so what we're going through now is we're having to mitigate the impact of those decisions by pulling back in our hiring for this year of non-essential positions, and obviously prioritizing our school-based positions, but then also pulling back on our discretionary spending as well to help offset that.
I'm going to leave it at that. I heard what you said and didn't say. I heard you. Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I'll address the board's amendment process and what happened in last year's budget cycle. I think it's important to do that. First and foundationally, I want to articulate that the board approves a budget, and it's actually recommended by the superintendent. So the budget is in fact owned by the board. And just as the board can make an amendment to a policy, the board can make an amendment to its budget. Now, typically, nowhere is it codified in board policy that we have a process for actually amending the budget. But if you just read Robert's Rules of Orders, you can amend anything to be able to do your work. I want to make sure I articulate what happened in last year's budget process. It is often articulated that the work that we did was only additive. And that's not a full reflection of what we did last year. I myself and Board Member Walker proposed cuts. You literally, the chief financial officer can look at you. She literally looked at it and said, we could actually make these cuts. You don't need to propose them. So last year in our process, we did add amendments to, we did have a proposal through the amendments process to add things to the budget. Some of our colleagues didn't agree on those. Those things were removed as part of the budget. There were some things that were added. Quite frankly, I felt strongly about the amendments I had. It started 2 literacy labs that we went to visit even today that are making tremendous changes in terms of how we teach kids to read in our school district. We work with the administration to be able to do that. But what I do want to be clear about, budget's owned by the board. That's important. The amendment process last year was not just additive, it was reductionary as well. I mean, we had significant amount of cuts to the budget. When I vote on a budget, I think of it the way I think about my house. I cut things, but there are other priorities that we work through as part of our process. And so, I wish our OBAFA chair was here tonight, but I might overshare here, but there's been a deep commitment that when you work in collaboration with the administration, we learned last year that there's a better way to do this work. And so we hope to have a year where there are no amendments to the work because of the process that we're going through right now. So yes, last year we had amendments. There were reductionary, there were some additive ones, but we learned a lot in that process of how to strengthen our budgeting process as a school district.
Board Member Walker?
Yeah, Yeah, I was just going to shortly just say that the goal this year is no amendments, and especially no additive. We just simply can't afford it. And with that being said, it is working in conjunction with our superintendent. It will be remiss of us to come and make recommendations for additions when we are trying to look at $150 million. So points well taken. It has been said in our communities. We've shared it in board meetings, and our superintendent has been very clear. And for us as a board collectively, our goal is to make no additive amendments to this year's budget, for sure.
Okay, I
Board
appreciate
member,
that.
well, thank you. Board Member Brown?
Yes, thank you so much for your question and statement, Ms. Millhouse. Something that I will say that I think the board is committed to, though, is ensuring that there is accountability when it comes to funding for special education and for certain opportunities in the blueprint. And so we want to make sure that we're always mindful those things are being taken care of first and foremost, especially if there's legal statute behind it. But me personally, and I know we've spoken on it before, I don't plan on voting for any additives. It doesn't seem like any of my colleagues plan on voting for any additives, because we want to make sure that the classroom is not impacted, obviously throughout this process, and we have to be creative. But first and foremost, we cannot compromise when it comes to funding Blueprint as well as special education. Thank you.
Board Member Boozer Strother?
Yeah, thank you so much. Ms. Millhouse, I just want to own, you're absolutely right. In May at Central High School, we had a special board meeting, and we were informed of the consequences of PGCEA contract, but it was a value-based decision. We knew that the Blueprint required minimum starting salary at $60,000. We chose that starting salary should be higher than that. And to be competitive, we want to attract educators at the beginning of their career instead of them going to other districts first. And we knew, and I knew as a board member, I want to own that we could be facing, that we are spending more money this year than we had income. So I sit here and I own that, and I want to say that for me, it was the decision around that we needed to fill these educator seats, and that contract would help do that. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, I want to give Ms. Millhouse the opportunity. Did you have any closing remarks?
I mean, my only closing remark is that as we continue to hire positions central, and we keep adding head count, and we keep talking about not having more cuts to come to the schoolhouse, it's not possible. So at some point, you got to stop the bleed. And if it means that positions that you feel comfortable, that you voted for, and because it helped understaffing, just how many schoolhouses are understaffed? Just how much funding is being pulled from the schoolhouse? So if you feel comfortable with putting money central, then please be very comfortable with cutting those same positions and putting it back in the schoolhouses. You all have a good one.
Thank you.
The only point I would add on that is I think a result of the board's work last year resulted in, we had a 52% reduction in vacancies this year, and I think that's significant. I think the salary increases and the work that was done to recruit benefited us, but there was a 52%. So in the state of Maryland, we had the most significant reduction in vacancies in all 24 jurisdictions, which came out. So that's good news. The bad news is we got to balance the budget, but that's a good thing that we're filling positions, and we'll work to continue to do so.
And it's going to get worse. So I'm not hearing anything different. So I'm glad you reduced, that's great. I'm not saying anything about it. What I'm saying is I don't see an answer to the problem. And we will never stop cutting, and at some point, we will have to hit the schoolhouse. At some point, you
Yes.
do have to reduce staff.
Yes.
And when does it stop? Because we're about to start hemorrhaging. And I'm a finance person.
Yes.
So we're about to hemorrhage. So I'm saying we got to make cuts. So let's not bring people on and put them in positions that we know in the year we got to cut them from. That's not fair to those individuals.
Well,
That's all I have to say.
Yes, and I think the teaching vacancies, I mean, in the ideal state, we have a qualified teacher for every vacancy, that we have, and will be 100% staffed. That always has to be our goal. Right now, again, our enrollment has been flat. And yes, if enrollment decreases, then it does have an impact on, our staffing. But now we're still, 300 teacher vacancies down, and so we're actively, recruiting, and our goal is to fill that. I mean, we've reduced our historic bus driver vacancy, down, for the first time under 100 in years. So we've got to, we must be aggressive. I mean, we just recently met with Bowie State University and some of the other, and we're meeting with other universities, because what I know is we're hemorrhaging because of, we're always so reactionary. It costs more to do the things that we're doing, getting outside contractors and things to address the fact that we have vacancies. So we've got to put strategies in place to get those vacancies filled, because it impacts. There are we've identified indirect challenges. When we have vacancies, then we have overtime issues, then we have substitute issues, and those things, and it's more expensive to address it on the after the fact. And so we must have an aggressive approach to fill vacancies first time, and that's what we'll continue doing.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Good evening to everyone on the board. My name is Phyllis Wright. I want to first say thank you all so very much for having the students and the parents and having us all here. This was a first for me to bring my daughter on a setting just like this, and I want to say thank you. Another thing, I appreciate what you guys are trying to do, but I'm looking at security in our schools. We need more security at Flowers High School. You guys know I advocate for Flowers High School a lot. And I wish we can get smaller class sizes for our children. That's very important for me as well, to make sure that our students have smaller class sizes so they can learn. Because if we're not teaching our children with the large class sizes, and they're not learning, so they're going to go do other things. But I want to just say thank you to each and every board member, to each and every person that's up here. I appreciate everything that you all are doing, and I know that the best interest is for our children. And I just want to say thank you so very much. I appreciate you all, okay? All right.
Just as a comment to that, Ms. Wright, thank you so much for your feedback. And certainly we have security in our schools as one of our #1 priorities. In addition to the teacher vacancies being addressed and the bus driver vacancies being addressed, we're also making great progress in our safety and security staff members. At our last meeting, we had less than 5 safety and security assistant vacant positions out of the entire complement of FTEs.
We have more than 3,000 students there, and we only have maybe 15 security personnel. That's not enough, and 1 officer there, and that's not enough. And you guys know I volunteer there. I haven't been there because I've been sick, and I'm going back to volunteer again because I enjoy talking to the students, engaging with the students, and to make sure not just the students are safe, but our staff is safe as well too. So if we can get more security personnel over there. I love Dr. Brown. He is doing a wonderful job with our children. But we do have a problem with security there because we have a lot of students there.
Yeah,
So if we can address that, that would be grateful for me.
And I would just add, one of the things we're looking at, it's always a challenge when we have to balance physical bodies and technology, because as was just communicated, the cost of physical bodies, continues to go up and escalate. And so we have to figure out how we do things more efficiently and effectively. And as we're looking at safety and security, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, we're looking, there are technologies that can greatly help with weapons detections and things of that nature. And, now they have AI cameras and things of that nature that can support. I mean, we'll always have to have enough people there, but there has to be a balance. I mean, you always, I do agree with the sentiment that we just heard, that we do have to be mindful with cost in personnel, because it escalates over time and it compounds. And so there is a danger that you can, be too staff heavy, across the board. And that's something we're working on. I mean, right now in this budget, most of the cuts that are coming from Central. I mean, we're committed to preserving, classrooms and class size, but that's going to hurt a lot of services. And we're thinking about how we must do things differently, because we're just going to be letting a lot of personnel go, which are heavy costs. So it's a tough, delicate balance as we go through, but we'll, I don't know, Dr. Coleman, if there are particular ratios or things we use on school sizes and things in the high schools that may guide us in our decisions.
So there are a number of factors that have to be considered. Our high schools have different configurations. Some high schools are in multiple buildings, so they would need an additional complement. So we can't use just a base ratio. We have to look at the needs of each individual school. But I think you hit it on the head, that in addition to the staffing allocation, we're also looking at what Director Cunningham would say are force magnifiers, which is technology, and how we find the proper blend of the people resources as well as the technology that's available to help support a safe environment in our buildings.
We have a security room there. If we can get personnel to mandate that security room there with all of these cameras that we have throughout our school, that would help as well too. If we can just get a person just to be stationed there and then have rovers go throughout the school, that would help. So because they have the radios and they can communicate with one another, and that would be a great asset to us as well too.
And my final comment is that thank you so much for that. Dr. Joseph has lifted up as a continued priority to continue to invest in safety and security in our schools. So we hear you, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you, and I will support you guys, and I will volunteer and mandate some of those doors as well. As a parent, my daughter is in there, so I'm proud of both of my girls. They're doing a great job. And thank you so much about William Hall Academy. We have to address those issues over there too, because we need to just listen to our staff and what they're saying, because we have issues there at that school. So thank you so much, Brandon, Chair, for taking care of that as well. Okay? Thank you.
Hello, my name's Catherine. I'm a parent of 2 elementary school students, and our third one's going to start elementary school next year. I do have to say I'm a little disappointed in how tonight went. The title of Dollars and Decisions, I thought there would have been more talk about the budget cuts. I know the finance office did share information, but it seemed very broad. They kept using the word transparent, and I don't know, I just don't really feel like we're really getting information. I don't know if when the budget comes out in January, it'll be more detailed about where those cuts are coming from, because I don't really feel like we've been hearing that. And, someone also mentioned things being redundant, and that's kind of how I felt. I've been trying to attend some meetings over the last few months to kind of get a better idea of what's going on, and I kind of feel like I just am hearing the same thing. So to me, that's not being transparent, that's just repeating yourself. You're not really sharing true information. Frequent communication is not thorough communication. Tonight, again, I was a little bit surprised. Surprised by all the advocacy talk. I understand the importance of it, and I appreciate you guys sharing that perspective and the parents that have done it themselves and shared. But My oldest is in third grade, and I don't personally feel like I want to put my time towards advocacy because of how I have seen the county spend money. I'm also a PGCPS grad, so I have been around for a while, but it's a different view as a parent. But I just don't feel super confident in the way PGCPS spends their money, so I don't want to really be going out advocating for more. I think the money we have can be better spent, and to me, asking for more money feels like we're putting money into a bucket that has a hole. I think the county needs to look at how they're spending their money. I know there's a lot of waste, and I'm hoping that these budget changes will address some of that waste so we can continue to work smarter and not harder.
I would say thank you, thank you for your feedback. Right now, the budget process is it's long. It begins right now. Our goal was to communicate to our community and to the board that there's a problem, step one, and be clear about the gravity of that problem. We're in the process right now of, identifying the $150 million in cuts. And as we shared tonight, we're at about $102 million. So we still have about $48 million to go. We would hold until January 22nd, you'll see exactly what we're looking at, and we're gathering the feedback in. And the reason for that is, again, it is a tremendous task to identify that degree, that severity of cuts. I mean, it's significant. It's an extremely significant amount to cut out of one budget in 1 year, even with a budget as large as ours. And so, we believe in measuring 10 times and cutting once. And so we're in the process right now. We don't want to prematurely put things out until we can make sure we have the correct estimates on what things would be. Because if we put it out prematurely and accurately and it's not clear, then you've got to backtrack and do those types of things. So we've been working tenaciously, and we're going to work through the break. So that way, on January 22nd, when we present the cuts, there'll still be we will plan opportunities for the community to see what that $150 million in cuts are. There'll be opportunities for the community to give the board feedback on those recommendations, and then the board will be able to listen, have the opportunity, as Dr. Moss shared. Ultimately, the board makes the final decisions on the budget. So once they hear from the community on those cuts, they have an opportunity to look at it and make adjustments as needed, and then they move it to the county council, to the county executive. When it goes to the county executive will give their budget, and then it'll move to the county council. And in that process, there's still opportunities to communicate, advocate, make adjustments. And then once a final budget is determined from the county council, then we have to finally reconcile once we know what those final dollars are. So the process is, we've got 6 months still. We just started early in communicating with everyone to get everyone alerted, to be aware, so when those times will be to effectively advocate upon the specifics. But once we communicate the budget on January 22nd, there'll be about 6 months of opportunity for feedback, adjustment, and then finalization until it's ratified. So we would love to continue to evolve the process. So this year's much different from last year, and with the feedback that we'll get from this process, it'll continue to refine. But our goal is to be open, transparent, communicative. We want to make sure our budget book, you shouldn't have to have a PhD to understand our budget. We got to figure out how to simplify that, and we know that that's work that has to happen, because when it seems convoluted, people assume we're trying to hide something. And we got to show you that that's not the case. But we've got to work. So it's a long, arduous process, and we're willing to take any feedback you're willing to give. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted, just 1 second, while you were there talking about first of all, I want to name and say that a lot of what you said is abundantly true, and I want to follow up on two things the superintendent said. Part of the reason why we have to really be careful around where we are in our budgeting process is this impacts humans. And if people are finding out in a public venue that their jobs may be shifted, that doesn't feel good to them. So this process takes them engaging with our labor partners, the many folks that work in our district to be able to do that. I appreciate you calling us out tonight on our advocacy piece. But I think we are so pressed around that because we spent time in Annapolis last year, and had we never spent our time there, we would have lost community school funding last year. And so while we're heavy tonight, we wouldn't even have what we have today in a budget had we not focused so much on advocacy. And I think you're right. There are ways that we can reduce costs. I myself last year started filing amendments as a 3-month board member to consolidate offices because I thought we needed to be able to do that. Wasn't the right time to do that. Looks like we might be at a time now where we have to do some of that work. But I want to say to you and acknowledge the fact that, yes, our title may have been just a bit misleading on tonight, but we were focused on advocacy because when session starts on January 14th, it's 90 days, and you could lose it all. You could lose it all in 90 days. But we have 6 months of our budgeting process where we'll spend time. I hope tonight somebody will give you the schedule that will lay out all the engagements opportunities. I think I got it in my email today between now and the end of this budgeting process. But I will say, I was profoundly disappointed last year in our budgeting process, and this board tasked the leadership with having a process that we could all engage in pretty finitely. And this is just phase one of that. We did not have this last year. This was not even a factor in our work last year. So I want to acknowledge your concerns. I want to say they're true. I want to say they're real. But I also want to name for you why we're so adamant about advocacy as well, because we almost saw programs that supported kids who were in Title I schools almost snatched from under us. We heard legislators in Annapolis say, "Oh, we don't know that you all need that to be able to support your students and your student learners." And when I think about schools in my district, like Andrew Jackson, or I think about schools like District Heights had the largest academic gains in the district. And that is a school that was supported by Blueprint dollars, that is a community school. And had we not built wraparound services, or had we lost the investments in that school, they wouldn't have been able to do the hard work of supporting kids in that community. And so for us, we see how people so easily snatch things when they get to Annapolis. And so that was part of our focus tonight. But I think what you said is true, and I appreciate you calling us out on that. And I think there are opportunities for us to grow.
Yes, this will be really quick within my time zone. One of the things, too, I think that we should take the opportunity to do. We didn't have time to do our engagement portion tonight, but that game and activity and interaction with the folks who are able to come, I think will be tremendous, because it just gives you a different mindset as to these real dollars and decisions and how we make decisions and how tough it is to make decisions. So I think just continuous learning. We couldn't do it tonight, but as we move forward inside of the process, it would be amazing to be able to do that. Maybe at one of those 3 sessions that you talked about, maybe we could do that. The other piece that I had around this advocacy piece, I just want to remind people, hopefully again, you have this book. It's the 2026 Legislative Platform, and just want to call out what our core 4 are that we're going to be talking through our policy and governance and board. Is supporting students with disabilities, supporting academic achievement for multilingual learners, modernizing construction and facilities for student success, and ensuring safe and secure environments for students and staff. And when you think about that, for each one, it's broken down into the what and the why. So we're able to articulate that. It talks about the exact request of funding. Mind you, we won't get all this funding we're asking for, but what it does do is help us to educate in why we need those dollars, why they're important. So please go through this whenever you have time. Talk about it at your PTAs, your PTOs, engage your board members where necessary. And it's just been a good session to be able to talk about Educate, Advocate, Act together, but did just want to say that the interactive piece, I think we should absolutely bring in as we continue forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much. When we look at this 150 million gap for next year, the goal is that we are so united and our legislators hear the stories of what we're going to lose, that they actually work for us. We often, as Board Member Moss noted, it does feel sometimes like we're in a fight with them. Our delegates and senators should be putting our children first, should be the biggest supporters of our children, but yet we do have to go and remind them of that, and that they can find that 150 million. And that is what we're doing tonight, is getting ready for that before the details come out. Because as a parent, as someone who's been a parent for 10 years, I was engaged in PGCPS when the fight was all internal, where the budget was set and then the parents fought it out for, we want this extra teacher at this school and we want, this funding over here, or we should get, maintenance first. And that's not the fight. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be all in Annapolis demanding adequate funding. And we don't have adequate funding. And so I don't want to return to the days where when the chambers are filled with one school with 200 parents, because they have a, history of, a PTO where they can bring out 200 parents. And I have schools in District 3 where we don't even have PTOs. And so they're not going to be able to come and fight. And so that is my goal, is that we don't return to that we put our energies to the funders, to Annapolis and to the county council. So that is where I sit tonight as a board member. And I would say that PGCEA does have a big role here. It's an election year. They endorse candidates, and they can withhold those endorsements until we get this 150 million. And that is what the politics is rough. Politics is not kind. I don't particularly like it at all. Most people know that about me. I don't particularly care for these politics. But if you have the power and endorsements and campaign checks, this is the year to use them or withhold them. And so 150 million. I feel like Annapolis and the county council can get that 150 million, and Dr. Joseph doesn't have to deliver so much bad news. Thanks.
So I want to thank everybody for their comments tonight. They definitely was received. And for those of us that want to, we have our board staff with the yellow shirts. They have the QR codes. If anybody want to submit questions online, we'll be able to take those too. But I do want to yield the floor to Board Member Brown to give an update.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Thank you for everyone who came, everyone who were online to stream us. We really appreciate all the parents, students, community members who are all a part of this conversation. The chair for the OBAFA committee, board member Goins McCants, was unable to make it. She wished she could be here, and she wants to thank you all, and she hates that she missed it here. She does have a family emergency That is the only reason why she is not here. So she does have some closing remarks, and I will be reading them in her absence. So again, good evening, everyone. As a member of Prince George's County Board of Education and the Planning Committee for this event, I want to personally thank you for the extraordinary turnout and the deeply thoughtful contributions made tonight. Your willingness to dive into the details shared this evening has made PGCPS stronger. Tonight was an essential step in our budget process. These special events are crucial in gaining your perspective and allow us to govern effectively. We heard your priorities clearly. I want to reinforce one final point. Your voice is directly tied to our budget. Every dollar we allocate is a statement of our collective values. By engaging in this process, you are helping us align those dollars with our collective vision for educational excellence. On behalf of the entire board, thank you for the investment of your time. We look forward to continuing this vital conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. Dr. Joseph?
Thank you, Board Chair Jackson. And as we conclude our Dollars and Decision Learning session, I offer my sincere gratitude to every parent, every student, and every community member here tonight, and to those streaming this event from home. Your active participation and focused discussions in our outbreak sessions have been incredibly valuable. This is a partnership we need to navigate the financial complexities of our FY27 budget and to fulfill the promise of our strategic plan. Please know that the feedback you provide tonight is not simply noted, it's formalized. The sentiments captured by our strategic planning team will be integrated into the data that informs the board and the executive cabinet as we finalize our budget priorities. We're committed to partnership and will continue to deliver on that commitment through this process. Thank you to the Board of Education, our executive cabinet, and to all staff who helped organize tonight's event.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's meeting. To our online viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 9 o'clock on the dot. And the December 18th, 2025 special Prince George's County Board of Education meeting is adjourned.